Well, thank you so much, Chris. It's a pleasure to be with you and my former ESPN colleague and former ESPN coordinating producer at ESPN. You're the son of the late great Dr. Jack Ramsay. I want to talk to you about your father and son relationship, like I have my father and son team at my company. Chris, when you think about relationship building, everybody has their own definition. How would you define relationship building? What does that definition mean to you?
Well, Garrett, first of all, thank you very much for having me on the show. It's a great pleasure to be here with you. And I have to tell you, I watched all your shows. I watched the Lou Holtz show. I watched the Tim Kurkjian show, the Del Harris show. I watched the James Miller show. They're all terrific shows. And I'm thinking to myself, why does Garrett want to talk to me? I mean, he has all these great guests and then there's me. But thank you again for having me on. Truthfully, I learned so much from watching those shows about relationships and team building. And I got to tell you, I agree with everything the other guests said. Lou Holtz, who is a world renowned and great motivational speaker. I mean, he was tremendous on his show. He talked about doing the right thing and caring for people and doing your best. And I think that those are the things that you need to do to establish great relationships with other people.
Absolutely. And, when you look back to some of my episodes with Coach Holtz and Tim Kurkjian, James Miller, Howard Schwab, I also interviewed Rex Walters, who was a former player at the University of Kansas under Roy Williams, who was just previously the assistant coach of the New Orleans Pelicans. When you look at all those interviews, what resonated with you? And again, when you think about relationship building, what resonated with you? Any particular message that they had?
Well, I think the one thing that I kept hearing people say was you have to care about other people. And that resonated in particular with me. You have to care about the people on your team, and you have to do it in a way in which they recognize it. You have to hold people accountable. You can't just care about your best player or your best writer or your best performer on television. You have to care about everybody. If you don't care about the 15th person on your team, you're not doing it right. You have to care about everybody. You have to communicate with them, stay in touch with them, and show caring. Or as Coach Del Harris said, do caring. That is an important part of the relationship building with other people. I remember when I was working at ESPN, we have our staff of reporters are spread out across the country. We have reporters in Los Angeles, in Golden State, San Francisco, and Dallas, and in Florida, and Chicago. And so it's hard to stay in touch with all those people all the time. But I tried to make it a point of, picking up the phone and getting in touch with everybody, at least once a week or every few days. And not just during the bad time. Like if somebody made a mistake, of course you have to follow up on that. But if somebody did something good, pick up the phone, give them a call, let them know that they did something good. And I think being a positive person, being a positive leader is just as important as caring about other people.
Well, everybody has a role to play, and that's what Coach Harris talked about. Everybody on the bench, whether they're a starter or they're a reserve player, they're all very talented. They all have ways to contribute. Not only have to work together to make a team successful and try to compete for an NBA championship. And there are role players or role individuals, if you will, whether it's on a team or in a business or a family. Talk about your upbringing, growing up and having a father as a NBA champion head coach of the 1977 Portland Trail Blazers with Bill Walton, a gentleman who I got to meet Bill Walton about 10 years ago, right before I even worked at ESPN. And that was your dad's top player on the Portland Trail Blazers. And, talk about what that was like. The accolades speak for themselves, but, you can highlight those as well as a top 10 coach in NBA history. But talk about him as a father. What values did he instill, when you think about from a family's perspective and then from a team's perspective?
Well, we did this exercise at ESPN one time, and they said, describe yourself in 5 words. And I said, luckiest man in the world. I mean, life's greatest gift to me was being born into the Ramsay family. My dad, my mom, my brother, my 3 sisters, now my wife and 3 daughters and grandson and son-in-law and cousins and aunts and uncles. And it's been a terrific life for me being in this family. I've received so much love and support from everybody in the family. And it all starts with my dad, who, he's best known for being an NBA coach, a Hall of Fame coach, and a broadcaster. He worked at ESPN for 20 years after he stopped coaching in the NBA. And he was also a global ambassador for the game of basketball. The NBA sent him around the world with Hubie Brown, Bill Walton, Calvin Murphy, and some others to do clinics in Europe, in Asia, and in Central and South America. So they traveled the world teaching the game of basketball. Coaches would come from all over the place to see my dad and Hubie and Walton and Calvin Murphy give these clinics. And then they would take their messages, their lessons back to their home teams, their clubs, their national teams, and push that message around. So that's basically my dad's professional career. But he was much more than just a basketball coach. He was born in the 20s. So he was raised during the Depression. His family, like most Americans, did not have much in the way of money. So he had to earn everything he got. He was a decent athlete. He earned a scholarship to St. Joseph's College. So he was a D1 basketball player. And he also, during college, he signed up for the US Navy. World War II broke out. He became an officer in the Navy. He was a underwater demolition expert. He was a frogman. He and his team would set explosives and blow up bridges and that kind of thing. Now, he was being trained for the invasion of Japan, and they were on their way to mine Tokyo Harbor when the war ended. So he never actually got to complete his mission, but his naval experience was one of the most impressionable things on him in his life. He went back to St. Joe's, finished his career there. He got a PhD from the University of Pennsylvania. That's why people know him as Dr. Jack, because he actually has a doctorate in education from there. Yeah. He was a college professor. He was a world-class triathlete. He was very dedicated to health and conditioning. He would swim every day. In the morning, I would come down for breakfast at 7 o'clock, and he'd be at the stove making omelets, and he would have already run. He would have already been in the water, did his laps. He would have already ridden his bike. He was very, very disciplined and dedicated to his health and conditioning. And he was also a humanitarian. He helped launch a charity called Africa Outreach USA. And the goal and the mission of that charity is to build basketball programs and basketball courts at schools across Africa. So he had a lot of great life experiences, and not just in basketball. And all of those experiences influenced me in the way he approached life, he and the way he conducted himself in doing so.
And when you say that he influenced you, and you talk about all the various activities and all the interests that he had, whether it's, God-given talent, being, an athlete, or, just training for, military combat that thankfully he didn't have to see, but living a life of discipline. And you speak of that. What are your fondest memories? What things are you proud of that he instilled in you? I'm sure there are so many. And how has that shaped you to the human being you are today and leading you to a career at ESPN?
Well, he was very competitive, and I think some of that wore off on me. And he was very disciplined, and some of that wore off on me. He was a great influence on me in those two regards. He was a very dedicated Christian. He would, he was went to church, on the regular. He was there, and I think that he influenced me in that way also. Um, but one of the things that he always said was, if you see something that doesn't look right, you have to step in and try to influence that in whatever way you can. I remember one time when I was in college, he and I went out after a game to a restaurant, and there was another couple in the restaurant, and the man was yelling at his wife in the restaurant. And my dad got up there, and when he couldn't observe this without doing anything about it, so he went over there and told the guy to knock it off. And the guy said, "Hey, this is none of your business." And my dad said, "I'm making it my business. What you're doing is not right. Knock it off." He was able to, diffuse that situation. So those are the things that I think that my dad would not allow things like that to go on. If he saw something, he did something about it.
Well, the fact that he inserted himself into an area that perhaps maybe was uncomfortable, but it just speaks to his directness and standing by what he firmly believes in is not right. And, you or I would do the same thing too. Anytime you see somebody who's being disrespected, it's an uncomfortable feeling because, you're naturally wanting to help out a situation or diffuse a situation and do the right thing. And I think that it speaks to his character, that he was being respectful, but at the same time, he was trying to make an impression to hopefully have this gentleman see differently in treating his wife in the manner in which she should be treated, and that should be with great respect. So it speaks probably about how you were raised and the values that you saw growing up, and talk about your relationships with your siblings. And did you look at them as a team as well, being a team growing up?
Yeah, I have an older brother, John, who also has a PhD from University of Buffalo. He's on the faculty of Muhlenberg College. And I have three sisters. My sister Susan Daly is a PhD also. She just retired from Quinnipiac University. She worked in the law school there. My sister Sharon has a master's degree in education. She was a teacher. She's married to former NBA coach Jim O'Brien. And my younger sister Carolyn ran for LA City Council, worked in City Hall in Los Angeles for a number of years, and now she works in LA trying to build parks and grow trees out there to
Wow.
improve the quality of air for all the Angelinos. So yeah, and
That's
my
wonderful.
dad always tried to get us to work together as a team. We would we all had jobs around the house, and one of the after dinner, we would all like he would say, "Let's do a blitz on the kitchen," and you, Chris, you empty the dishwasher, and Sharon, you clear the table, and John, you wipe down the counters, and Carolyn, put the food, so it was all like a teamwork atmosphere in just about everything we did.
And that's wonderful that you have those vivid memories and that it was like a game, right?
Yeah.
Everybody has going back to, roles, and everybody's going back to, the little things that make even chores at your home a simpler time. And that's the thing too. If you do the little things every day, or even the little things in the moment, it sets up for, you know, uh, big wins, right?
Yeah.
Just a team and, winning the day, something as simple as a chore or doing your homework or, making your bed. I mean, it all adds up to discipline. Over time, all the little activities make up for longer term success because it's just, you know, being in a position where you're learning from experiences and you're learning from a place where it was very much knowing that your parents or your father in this case was giving you that blueprint to be successful human beings and taking everything that you do seriously and doing it with the best possible efforts and joy and passion. And would you think that your dad would make a great CEO of a company? And would you consider yourself a great CEO of a company, let's say, with if that was your path?
Well, I think my dad could do anything he put his mind to. He was, um, he wasn't a great golfer, but um, when I played with him, he, if we were having a match, he always beat me because, and I'm not a great golfer either, but uh, he really bared down. He knew how to bear down. He knew how to take care of the little things, but he also was able to see the big picture. So I think he could be a great CEO, and he knew how to build a team. And I think um, you know, team building uh, is a necessary skill for a manager, a CEO, any corporate executive. Um, you know this as well as anybody. Uh, Building the team, like you're a Bucks fan, right? I heard
Yeah.
you say on one of the previous shows that you're a Bucks fan. Uh,
I grew up in Tampa, and since 1996, I've been a
yeah.
Bucks fan. Yeah.
So Garrett, the Bucks well, they haven't won until last year. They hadn't won a playoff game in almost 20 years,
Yeah, since our last Super Bowl win.
right?
Yeah.
So somebody down there gets the big good idea of, hey, let's get some stars in here. Let's get Tom Brady, let's get Gronk, let's get Leonard Fournette, and they win the Super Bowl. I think from my dad's point of view, he knew that you had to get stars um, in the in in the organization to be a world champion, to be number one, to have great success. Um, you see this over and over and over again in sports. Now, uh, you once you get them in, you have to apply the rules. Um, the always do the right thing
Right.
and do your best and love one another and be positive and hold people accountable. You have to do all those things. But job one, number one priority for an executive um, should be to bring in talent. You can use LeBron James as an example. In Cleveland, he played there for 7 years,
Right.
and the Cavs were unable to put stars around him. Um, he was playing with Anderson Varejao, Zydrunas Ilgauskas, and David Wesley, and um, Eric Snow, and not Boobie Gibson. These guys are all good players. They're among the top 500 players in the world, but uh, they're not all-star level, elite level players that is going to win a championship. So when he became a free agent, Pat Riley, uh, who knows this better than anybody, gets LeBron to come to Miami, puts him with Dwayne Wade, Chris Bosh, Ray Allen. Now you have four Hall of Famers right there,
Right.
and you're going to win a championship. They went to the finals 4 straight years, um, and won twice. So, and it doesn't. It's not just in sports. It's industry. Across industries. Like if you look at Hollywood, say somebody says, "Hey, let's get George Clooney, Matt Damon, uh, Catherine Zeta-Jones, Don Cheadle, Andy Garcia, Brad Pitt. Let's get them. We'll make a caper movie. We'll call it Ocean's 12, and we'll make $350 million."
Right.
And they do, and they make $350 million. Then 2 years later, they make Ocean's 13 with the same, and they make another $300 million. So, and then artists in music, uh, Beyonce, Taylor Swift, The Weeknd, Drake, Chris Stapleton, Justin Timberlake, all
Right.
these people are collaborating. They're huge stars. They know they can make great music together, or by themselves. But if they get together and team up with other stars, they can make huge hits. So um, I think my dad, he was lucky. He had that one shot with Bill Walton, who was the MVP of the league in 1978, but one of the great basketball players of all time. Um, and they got also, some people forget that the year that the Trailblazers won the championship, they had just gotten an infusion of talent from the ABA. The ABA had just folded, and the
Right.
Blazers were able to pick up some great players from the ABA to lift that team to championship level.
Right, exactly. And I think right place and right time. And, your dad not only saw all-star or elite level talent, but he was able to really know that this is the moment where I'm going to get my best chance to get to coach guys that I never had the chance to coach. And, it's a great underdog type of story. And nobody was predicting at the time that the Portland Trailblazers would win the title, and they did.
Right.
And it wasn't a fluke. Your dad is one of the best coaches to ever coach the game, and he was in a transition period. You talk about the ABA folding. Even guys like Julius Erving, who had came from the ABA, and then just other guys who had successful ABA careers and who were able to make the transition to the NBA. But your dad really was in a position where he had Bill Walton leading the way, but he had other supporting guys around him, and that's what makes the best team. And I love your references to the Hollywood movies and music. I remember meeting NSYNC a couple of times during those meet and greet days because they were from the Orlando area, and I was in nearby Tampa. And I remember going to a couple of their concerts, and my sister, having an older sister, she was a big fan of the music, but I would remember those songs by heart because when you're the younger brother, you just remember those things.
Yeah.
But getting to meet Justin Timberlake and Joey Fatone, and I recently saw Joey Fatone last year in Orlando. It's just interesting how things just stand the test of time. That music stands the test of time. You talk about the Oceans 11, 12, and 13. Those movies that stood the test of time because we've seen throughout history too, you can get very star-studded celebrities to act in movies, and you can get the best talent to be on teams. But some teams are not able to win a championship, even though they considered destined to be, because expectations were so high and they were just not in the rhythm. And then we've seen the same situation, but then they win the championship, or that movie's going to be a box office hit. So it's amazing how coaches know what to do with talent. If you're going to give a basketball reference, or a director is going to know how to direct a movie, he knows how to bring the strengths and minimize the weaknesses on a stage or on a movie set or on an NBA court or an NFL field. And, you know, talk about maybe what did your dad do? And you probably touched upon this, but what do you think your dad did so well to make that team an NBA championship winning team? What were the little things? And did he share any stories with you, or do you remember that, year vividly?
I do. One of the stories that he did share with me was when he first went to Portland. He met with Bill Walton, and Bill Walton told him, he said, "Coach, don't assume we know anything. Teach us everything you know." And that to me was a perfect message for one of the best players in the league, if not the best player in the league, to send to his coach. It was a message of humility. It was a message of, we want to learn. It was a message of, coach us. We want to be coached. And so when my dad heard that, he was very encouraged. So my dad was able to put in his systems and know that he had Walton. Walton had his back, and that Walton would um, run the plays, both offense and defense, that my dad wanted to run. His offense was ball movement and player movement. So Bill Walton would touch the ball, and all four other players would touch the ball at least once on every play. uh, Walton would get the ball at the elbow and turn and face the basket, and there would be screens and cutters and other players moving to get open, and then he would make passes. Two, three, four passes would be made, and the team would get a layup. It was amazing. This is again the team concept of everybody working together, and you get a layup, you get an easy basket. And so I think that was it. Now, the Trailblazers played the 76ers in the finals that year. And you mentioned Julius Erving. Julius Erving was on that team. George McGinnis was on that team. Daryl Dawkins, Doug Collins, Henry Bibby. The Sixers were loaded with stars, and as you said, they were expected to win the series, but they didn't play team basketball the way the Trailblazers did. And I think the reason why the Trailblazers were uh, victorious in that series is because of the way they played. They played team basketball. They shared the ball. They took care of one another. They had each other's backs on defense, and they were victorious.
Yeah, and the rest is history. They were able to stand up to the Philadelphia 76ers, and they were able to match up very well, and they were able to, overcome odds and win the championship. And I think that is definitely a highlight in NBA history. And I love how you're able to just walk us through in such a descriptive type of fashion, and really give the audience at home an understanding of what was necessary to compete at such a high level at the time. And Bill Walton was coached by one of the best at UCLA, John Wooden, and I'm sure getting the opportunity to play at UCLA, to play for the Portland Trailblazers, and even get to play for with Larry Bird and Kevin McHale and everybody in the Celtics. And even though he was past his prime, he was great wisdom, and still good enough to compete at a high level, even though injuries kind of derailed, Bill Walton, but he was still able to play at a high level for so many years. And I'm so happy that your father had a wonderful opportunity to coach him. What are you most proud of these days as you look back on your career at ESPN and, growing up? Talk to me a little about Rollins too. I know I'm talking to you from Orlando, and I used to live in Winter Park for a couple of years, and that's where I met my wife there. So Winter Park is very special to me. She went to Rollins College as well. Talk about your time at Rollins and what team related or relationship building activities did you experience?
Well, Rollins was a great place for me. Um, they they let me do a lot of independent studies. So I made films down there. I did a lot of videotape work. Um, I also worked at the radio station and had to direct the staff there a little bit. So that was one of my team building exercises. I worked on the newspaper at Rollins, but Rollins is a great place. Winter Park was a great place. I really enjoyed going to college there. It was just a phenomenal spot for me. It offered so many opportunities to me and opened so many doors for me and helped me, um, uh, get my career started. I actually started my career at a radio station in Orlando while I was at Rollins. So um, yeah, I was I loved Rollins, but I was anxious to get my career started at the same time. So I took advantage of all that kind of thing.
That's wonderful. And what relationship building things that are you involved in now? Now that you're retired, and would love to hear more about what you've been up to
Yeah,
since retirement.
thanks. So before my dad passed, he helped launch this charity. I think I referred to it earlier, Africa Outreach USA. Um, we're trying to build sports facilities, mostly basketball, and sports programs, again, mostly basketball, at rural schools in Africa. And we're a small group. We're all volunteer, uh, but um, that is become an important thing in my life. My dad, I think he did this so that we would have something to do. After he kind of said, "Here, do this." But I remember one day I was visiting him, and there was a FedEx envelope on his kitchen table, and there was a DVD in there. I said, "Dad, what's this?" And he goes, "Oh, just put it in the machine and play it." So I was playing it, and it was a basketball clinic at a rural. It was a dirt court in rural Africa, and the baskets were kind of like this. They were slanted, but there were 30 kids, boys and girls. Many of them had no shoes, working really hard, trying to learn how to play basketball, running up and down. And and I was watching this in amazement. These kids were really, uh, doing their best, trying their best. And some of the kids were really pretty good. And at the end, the camera panned over and it said Jack Ramsay Grassroots Basketball Initiative, Zimbabwe. And I looked at my dad. I said, "So this is your thing? You're doing this?" And he looked at me. I had no idea that he had started this. So um, so he opened the door for us to pursue so many things. And now my I've been to Africa twice um, to participate in clinics and in fundraising to help get this program, um, to continue this program. And it's been a great source of pride for me and the rest of my family. It's been a great experience uh, working with Africa Outreach, meeting the dedicated uh, coaches and school educators in some of these places. Garrett, I mean, the schoolhouse, and their number one priority is not to build a basketball court, because the schoolhouse, they have a lot of times they have absolutely nothing. You walk in the schoolhouse and there's just a blackboard there, and the teacher's writing on. There's no electricity, there's no running water. So they have nothing or next to nothing. So um, we're trying to change the situation over there and help um, the kids through sports.
And when you think of it as a philanthropic nonprofit type of organization that you're very proud of that your dad, helped start. When you think about what makes a great CEO or what advice you would give to CEOs, it seems like being a part of this organization, you can think about it, what requires as an executive leader in a nonprofit world to make an impact on so many lives outside the US in a place or on a continent like Africa where, basketball has been evolving over 3+ decades. And even with the 92 Dream Team, really putting basketball on the world stage with, Michael Jordan, Scottie Pippen, Clyde Drexler, Karl Malone, John Stockton, all those athletes at the time, David Robinson, who played on that team, Magic Johnson. But you think about, how basketball's evolved in so many countries where basketball is being played today. The work that you're doing in Africa, it requires a lot of selfless, innovative, philanthropic efforts and, skills and talents to really be able to maximize all the great potential that needs to be maximized and to give all of these young children hope and inspiration and dreams that they would hope to manifest with the help of, people like yourself. So I would imagine you're very proud of all that, Chris.
I'm very proud of it, and I'm proud of the organization. As I said, we're small, we're all volunteer, but when I tell people about it, they always say, "How can I help?" They want to chip in some way. So uh, it's been it's been very rewarding. People here in Connecticut have donated uniforms and sneakers and uh, referee equipment, whistles and striped jerseys, and you know all kinds of used basketballs, new basketballs. So uh, I've been able to meet so many people through this charitable endeavor, and so many good people. The great people want to do great things. They want to be associated with great things, and it's been a real pleasure for me and my family.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful. And you talk about how your father, being a Christian man, and whether you're Christian or whether you're of another, religious beliefs or backgrounds, it's all about, us as human beings. It's all about diversity. It's all about everybody coming together for a common cause. And it's wonderful that you are so proud of it and so proud to carry on the legacy that your, father left you, and then for your kids, I'm sure. And do you have any final words about relationship building in a team environment? I really enjoyed having you on the program. Would love to hear any final thoughts you have, maybe things that we haven't touched upon yet, because I really have enjoyed my time with you today.
Well, I just one thing that I've tried to do um, is to be positive, to have a positive attitude, and um, it can really have an impact on other people. Um, just as having a negative attitude can have a negative impact on people, if you have a positive attitude, you can really lift people up. So I remember early in my career, I was working at a job. It was a pretty good job, um, but I felt like I was stuck in that job, and I wasn't learning anything, and I wasn't going anywhere. So I didn't have a positive attitude in the workplace. In fact, I probably had a negative attitude. And one of my coworkers noticed this. I guess I was being grumpy too often, and he wrote a note to my boss and sent it to him. And then my boss called me in. He gave me the note, and I read it, and uh, I was flabbergasted, that um, I was having such a negative impact on the workplace.
Mm.
So from that point on, um, I had to look at myself in the mirror, like, what are you doing wrong? Why are you acting this way? Um, so I tried to change it, and I tried to change it 180 degrees so that I went go from negative to being positive. Now you can't be Pollyanna, but you have to when you hit the door, when you go in the door, you have to have uplifting attitude. You have to try to pick people up. And I think that is something, it doesn't take any skill, right? You don't have to have
Right.
any skill to do that. Anybody can do it. So I think just it's a little thing, but I think it makes a huge impact. And if you do the opposite, it makes a very huge impact as well. So be positive, don't be negative.
I think that's a great final message, and how that simple, you know, experience was so profound,
Yeah.
because all it is, and you can control it too, your personality, your outlook on life, never doubt any type of circumstance, no matter how hard it is, because you're always going to have challenges, but you're also going to have, many triumphs too. And it makes you a stronger person, and it makes you be very humble and really grows your character. And I think that you're a man of great character and integrity, and, the life that you've lived and the influences that you've had, from your dad, and the influences you have on your own family. And you've lived a great life of service, and I really enjoyed highlighting the relationship that you and your father had, because it's very rare to have a strong father and son relationship, and you had such a quality one. And it's helped you become the person you are today, and the teams that you had to lead at ESPN as well. And I'm just happy to know you, and happy that we met at ESPN. And I really enjoyed the time to get to know you, and that we could stay in touch for many years later, and then you could be a part of my podcast and share your experiences and your words of wisdom, which that's the purpose of relationship building and team environment. Because whether you're in the sports field, the business world, in music and fashion and in major motion pictures, of all walks of life, anybody, doesn't matter who you are, as long as you have a passion and a purpose to succeed, and you know that you can't get the job done without someone else or other people around you to help you get the job done, you help them, achieve their goals and dreams and what they aspire to. I mean, that's what makes the world a better place. So I really appreciate your time today, Chris. Thank you so much.
Garrett, it's been my pleasure. Thank you for having me on the show.
Thank you so much, Chris. And we'll stay in touch, and you take care. God bless.